The United Nations watchdog is calling on the US police to put an end to racism and brutal tactics in the force. Nuruddin Amir, who headed a review of the US by the UN Committee of Racial Discrimination, urged American authorities to take action. He said the excessive use of force by police against racial and ethnic minorities is an issue of concern, particularly in light of the recent shooting of African-American teenager Michael Brown in Missouri. Amir said the shooting is not an isolated event and illustrates racial bias among law enforcement officials and regulations governing the use of force. He said Washington must ensure that every case of excessive use of force is promptly and effectively investigated. Let's go to Washington and talk to Dr. Wilma Leon, a nationally syndicated columnist. Welcome to the programme, sir. Dr. Leon, first of all, how significant is this that the United Nations is calling on US police to stop racist attacks? Because at the end of the day, the main question is that how much of an impact could this have on the behaviour of the US police when it comes to dealing with African Americans, not to mention other minorities?
Well, I believe in and of itself it will not have much impact, but as this whole issue gains more momentum, when issues such as these are put on the international stage and dealt with and validated by organizations such as the United Nations, it can have a tremendous impact from a cumulative perspective.
Some speak of a backlash from the black community and other minorities against the police force, and of course, if nothing is done. How likely is that?
Well, that's hard to predict, but any oppressed people who do not receive justice are very well within their rights. I mean, that's the whole basis upon which the United States was founded. And I think also what has to be taken into account is that not only is this happening to African American people, this is happening to people of color all around the world, in terms of the Palestinians, for example. And it's not an accident that American police forces are being trained and training with members of the Israeli Defense Force. And because that shows you a strategy in terms of mindset, in terms of tactics, in terms of equipment being used. This whole militarization concept is something that has to change as it relates to domestic policing.
But I mean, isn't there any oversight on the police force to check them every now and again?
Well, no, there is supposed to be oversight, whether that be through police review boards or whether that be through the United States Constitution and through the Justice Department. The issue is having a sense within a community and having the people in the community empowered so that those vehicles that are in place in terms of checks and balances on the police department can actually be imposed.
But I mean, the main question is that can something be done against the police? Because I mean, the evidence is already there. The many footage showing police brutality.
Well, the evidence is there, but evidence is always due to interpretation, and whether or not a prosecutor is going to bring charges, whether or not a grand jury is going to come down and indict. All of those things have to happen in the process, and that's where it is incumbent upon the people to be sure that the process is followed and that the people get the justice that they're seeking through the process.
Indeed. All right, we'll leave it there for the time. Many thanks to Dr. Wilma Leon, a nationally syndicated columnist from Washington. Thanks for your time there, sir.